Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Holliday. I am Vice Chair of the RIT Board of Trustees and a proud Saunders alum. Welcome. I know I'm speaking on behalf of Dave when I say we are so delighted that all of you are joining us this afternoon. Whether you're a student, an alum, a parent, a member of the faculty, a member of the staff, each of you are so important to our RIT community, and we are just delighted that you're taking time to share with us this afternoon and spend a little bit of time with Dave reminiscing about the past 8 years. So thank you so much for being here. I had the pleasure of meeting Dave 9 years ago when he came to campus to interview for the opening that would be created by Dr. Dessler's retirement. And it has been my distinct pleasure to work with you, Dave, over the last 8 years to move RIT forward.
Well, likewise,
So,
Susan. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been just an amazing 8 years working with you.
A few things have happened.
A few things have happened. So let's start there. What was it about RIT when you first came to campus that attracted you to the opportunity? Why did you think it was such a great fit for your leadership skills?
Yeah, so the story actually begins during the presidential search. At that moment, I had stepped down already as the Dean of Engineering at Michigan and was wondering whether there might be another university out there that would be a good match for my interests and the things I would like to do, and maybe the things I would like to do would match what that university needed. And the search committee was interested in me, but I was not very responsive.
Mm-hmm.
And
So true. So true.
So it was actually the president of Isaacson Miller. Isaacson Miller was facilitating the search, and Vivian from Isaacson Miller, she called me a couple times and said, Dave, you really need to do this. And I said, well, Vivian, I was looking for something different, but maybe not this different. And then it became a slippery slope because Vivian said, don't even send in your resume at this moment. Just talk to the board chair, which was Chris Whitman, as I recall, and the chair of the search committee, Brian Hall, who was a previous board chair. And so I did that and was pretty captivated. And you know them both very well. These are high-level people. They had a vision for the university. They could talk about the future. And so I started to look into it much more seriously and decided, no, maybe this really would be a good fit. And the interview went extremely well. And then later on, I got to meet you and a number of other trustees. And you could say the rest is history, except a whole lot of things happened after that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yes, I'm sure so too.
Yeah, but anyway, some things that did captivate me, even in that first quiet interview that was held in a hotel in downtown Rochester. Some things that captivated me were, number one, NTID. I really, really was pretty enamored with NTID, and there were a couple of deaf and hard of hearing individuals from NTID on the search committee, and they represented themselves, NTID, and RIT so well. I was also pretty captivated by just the sort of aura of the place, which is super inclusive. And every kind of student, every kind of person from every walk of life, but somehow they all come together in this community. And later on, I was to discover the student body was even more different than I first imagined, which became even more and more fun. But those are a couple things that came to mind. And I should say the other thing I had noticed this was in 2016 when I was interviewing in the fall of 2016. I had noticed the name RIT kind of making the rounds and becoming a little more prominent. And I could tell that our RIT had rapidly been getting better. And I was very interested in a job where the job was not to manage something, but the job was to build something. And so from those perspectives, it seemed like a good match.
And it certainly has, and build you have. We'll get to that soon. You have always been so engaged with the RIT student body.
That's true.
Talk a little bit. I'm sure you've got some wonderful stories to tell about students that you've engaged with over the last 8 years.
And Nancy's been a big part of this too. And
yes.
In our early years here, Nancy was pretty involved on one of the committees on the student government, et cetera. Right. So I would say Nancy and I become pretty good friends of every president of the student government. as well as the vice president. Every Halloween, we have a big bash right where we're sitting. We thought it was a pumpkin carving kind of thing, but because there's so many artists, no matter what they're studying at RIT, it becomes pumpkin painting. It's the only place I've seen where when you hand out the knives, students figure, why should you restrict your pumpkin masterpiece to just one pumpkin? And so let's make pieces out of multiple pumpkins and put all the pieces together into some gigantic creation. But anyway, that's turned out to be a real favorite with the students. We've also had a blast sitting with the corner crew at the hockey games.
Yes.
And so I tend to spend a little more time in the president's suite because we're hosting guests generally. Nancy slips out after the first period or so, and she's got a special set she hangs out with in the corner crew. And that has been a lot of fun. More recently, I'll just mention a couple of things the students did with us and for us. I've been known to do a little bit of DJing for the Electronic Music Club. And the students, this was a few Fridays ago, they put together a huge bash in the field house. It was elaborately decorated. There was a gigantic illuminated sign that spelled out DJ Munson. Nancy and I were up on stage, and that was quite an evening with the electronic dance music group and all these students that showed up. And then it was just a little more than a week ago, the students knew we liked to hike. So we took a little hike with the RIT Outing Club in the gorge below the Niagara Falls.
Oh, terrific.
And most people here probably haven't been there. It's almost as good as the falls themselves. There are two state parks there, Devil's Hole and Whirlpool State Park. And it's a bit of a rock scramble as you hike along that trail. But Nancy and I and her little dog Joe kept up pretty well with the students, and we had a blast. But those are just a handful of memories. And then there are a lot of other things that happen with the students. Our students are just so unusual that you never know what they're going to say. You never know what they're going to do. But what you do know is it's going to be fun.
And you have made it so fun for them.
We've tried, yeah, because we
videos
have this,
at the outset of
the
academic
videos have
year.
been popular. We have this sort of work hard, play hard mentality, and I had been, as I arrived at RIT, the students already knew that I had made some videos at the University of Michigan. They had watched those, and the students here wanted their videos. And so we set about making those videos. And when I say making, Nancy and I don't make anything. We have a wonderful marketing and communications group.
But you're great actors.
We work with them to develop the storyline a little bit, but they do, 99% of the work. We show up and goof off a little bit, and it all works out.
It works out terrifically.
Yeah. And but there's sort of a method to the madness. Those videos are incredibly popular with the student body. And today I just received an email from a former student, from an alum from about 10 years ago. And it turns out she works in a K through 12 school district, and she's been making videos to kind of humanize their superintendent of schools. And she wrote me this just absolutely lovely, elaborate email talking about the videos that Nancy and I have made and how important she feels that's been and how proud she is that her school would do that sort of thing.
Isn't that terrific?
Yeah.
That's just great. Well, let's move on to the strategic plan.
Sure.
When you came, the trustees were in the midst of formulating a new strategic plan.
Right. That's right.
And you grabbed hold, dove in, and put your own stamp on the plan.
That's true. Yes.
So talk a bit about your vision at the time, but then the impact that that plan has had on our students and our alums. It has made such dramatic changes
That's
to
a
the
great
university.
question, Susan. Yeah, because most of the things we've done are actually there verbatim in the strategic plan.
That's right.
I think some institutions construct a strategic plan. It contains a lot of lofty words and phrases. And then if it doesn't go on the shelf, it's not out in front of people that much. And our plan was a little bit different. And so I did take what the trustees and folks inside the university had worked so hard on and try to condense it to have fewer goals and then add a few goals that I had in mind. And we focused on people and programs, places. Let's see, there was one more P, and partnerships, I guess it was. And we've seen enormous changes on the campus. But at the top level, the plan was all about getting better and better people, because whoever has the most talent, they win. It happens in industry, it happens in academia. And to get the best talent, you have to have something special about your place. And RIT had some things that are special, but maybe we hadn't maximized what we could get out of those things. And I noticed even before arriving that RIT, yes, it's a STEM-based school. After all, technology is in our name, but it's a very unusual STEM-based school because we're so strong in the studio arts, and that's a historic strength that goes back to around 1900. And so we have the School for American Crafts, and we've got the sculptors, we've got the ceramicists and glass blowers and furniture designers and jewelry designers, and especially do we ever have photographers. And so I happen to be passionate about all these things, as well as the performing arts, and we've done a lot in that area we can talk about later. But anyway, I really felt that if we identified the intersection of technology, the arts, and design as something we were going to fully build out at RIT, because we had all the pieces, had already done a lot of work in prior decades. But if we really focused on that intersection, we could be distinctive. And here we are 8 years later, and we are absolutely the leading university in the nation that works at that intersection. And you might sit there and say, yeah, but not every student wants to do those things. We don't need every student. We just need, in some demographic of students, to be the top university for them. And then we'll have enough really top-notch students coming in. And that's what's happened. And what we've seen is, over the years, every year, the student quality is getting better and better and better and better. And, I hope we can make our alums feel proud if they're questioning whether they could get into RIT these days.
Right.
That's okay. In the previous institutions where I served, the alums always told me that. They'd say, Dave, I don't think I could get in here. And I'd say, that's a sign of progress, and you should be very proud of your alma mater.
I think you would agree that one of the other great outcomes of the strategic plan is our ranking of 91 in U.S. News and World
that's
Report.
right. Yes.
And it was such a wonderful accomplishment to celebrate. Talk a little bit about what it took to get us there, and then what's it going to take to move us to the next level?
Well, and so, we've not focused on, say, the U.S. News ranking as sort of a direct objective. No. Instead, the increase in ranking is a side effect of all the things we're doing.
Right.
And so we have, way more scholarship, way more research funding. We already talked about better and better students. We also have a phenomenal marketing and communications team that I alluded to earlier, and we are just better and better known. The one thing, though, that's holding us back from being ranked much higher is our graduation rates. Our graduation rates are actually pretty darn good for a STEM-based school. But if you want to climb higher in the rankings, the graduation rates have to be better than just pretty darn good. They really have to be excellent. And so our graduation rates right now, if you look at our 6-year graduation rate, and of course, most of our degree programs are 5 years. Some students will take 6 years to finish. That graduation rate is around 75% or so. But we need to get that above 80. And we need to get that freshman persistence rate from freshman to sophomore year, where right now that persistence rate, maybe it's 89% or thereabouts, that needs to be well into the 90s. And if we just do those things, we will jump up in the rankings a lot. And then there are, of course, many other things we're working on in parallel. But the path to higher rankings is very clear. If we just focus on the right things, as a side effect, we'll have a higher ranking.
Talk a little bit about the increase in PhDs that we've had over the last 8 years.
Yeah. And I've told the trustees this, and you've heard the same thing from me, Susan. The trustees made a decision in conjunction with the leadership of the university well before I ever arrived that RIT was going to become a research institution, and not giving up anything in education for sure. But that is the most expensive decision the trustees ever could have made. And when you think about it, you say, oh, yes, we're going to need to build some laboratories. That's not it. What happens is if you're a research-based institution, the faculty workload model is entirely different. So instead of a faculty member, say, teaching 3 or 4 courses every semester, or back in the quarter system is probably some other number of courses, but at any rate, if a faculty member is teaching 3 or 4 courses in a semester and that person's not doing research, you're getting a lot of teaching, so to speak, out of that faculty member. But if the faculty member is heavily engaged in research and scholarship, and we have a lot of expectations there in terms of publications, supervising PhD students and what have you, that faculty member now has to spend a whole lot of time on scholarship. When I say has to, they want to, but now is not able to teach nearly so many courses. And so we've really had to kind of juggle things there to make sure all the courses get covered and the quality of teaching doesn't suffer, but we have faculty with release time to do scholarship. That's one element, and we've managed to do that so far. Another element is just the faculty members engaged in writing proposals to bring in the research funding. And our faculty members last year were successful. It's mostly faculty members writing these proposals. We're successful in bringing in more than $100 million into the institution. So we crossed that barrier. And then the third aspect is in a major research university, the faculty actually don't do most of the research themselves. That would actually limit the amount of research that could be accomplished. Instead, it all gets magnified and scaled up by working with PhD students. And for a faculty member who's working with a brand new PhD student, they're probably giving that student a few ideas for them to get started, for that student to get started in their thesis research. But by the time that student is ready to graduate, they've probably contributed a whole lot of their own ideas and really are almost freestanding researchers in their own right. But to have all these PhD students, we needed more PhD programs. And so where do we sit now? In my time at RIT, we've doubled the number of PhD programs. We've doubled the number of PhD graduates, and probably somewhere in the neighborhood of doubling the number of research dollars.
It's been such a big accomplishment.
Yeah. But I credit the faculty, and I credit our vice president, Ryan Raffelli, and his staff. I get to oversee it all. I get to be a cheerleader, but I don't get to do research myself anymore.
Right.
So,
and let me circle back. I should have dug a little deeper with you on the graduation rate. Talk a bit more about what we're doing to help students stay here and then graduate.
So there are multiple factors. We know a lot about why students might choose to leave. A big part of it is struggling in the classroom, especially in some of the introductory courses in calculus and physics. When Ellen Granberg was the provost here, she made a special hire, and she hired Neeraj Butch from Michigan State University to be in charge of student academic success. And Neeraj is an associate provost, and he has a number of programs underway where we're now providing tutoring in subjects like math and physics right in the residence halls themselves. The students don't even have to take their pajamas off and change into something and walk down the quarter mile. They can actually receive tutoring right there. And there are a number of other programs, and so those are going to help us a lot.
So how well received is that, taking services right to them?
Yeah, it's been very well received. And I want to credit Jim Waters, our facilities people, the folks that manage the residence halls, because they somehow found the space for these study centers. And so that's working out well. Now, it'll be a few more years until we can measure the ultimate effect, because we need to look at graduation rates. And these are pretty new ventures we've launched, and it's it's mostly the freshmen and sophomores that this is designed for. But so far so good. One thing we know for sure is the number of students who are performing poorly in calculus and physics courses is dropping by a lot, and so that bodes very well for the future. But then there's another aspect to this, and that is just the overall climate for students. I think if you went back decades ago, maybe when some of our audience members were students here, there probably weren't a whole lot of organized activities on campus. Not that there weren't any, but I think the students pretty much created their own fun. And now our student affairs organization does such a great job of helping actually the students organize things. And so we've got about 300 student groups and societies. And I think for a lot of our students, they're probably spending half their time at RIT doing things outside the classroom. And some of these groups and societies may be just more on the fun side or maybe aligned with a particular interest of a student. But then we have, all these competitive project teams. And some of this has existed for a while, but the number of these teams is increasing. And so people are well aware of the Baja team, the Formula Race Car team, Hot Wheels, which is the women's solar car team. But we've got a lot of other teams, including some newer ones like the Rocket team. And students are learning so much in an experiential way with those teams, and they're creating memories that are going to last for a lifetime.
And how important are these communities and affinity groups for retention?
Oh my golly, I think it's critical because what we hear, and both from our students, from our own observations, and in talking to others at other universities, is you got to find your people. And we need for that to happen within the first semester, ideally. And we're hearing more and more that is what's happening. You can think of major affinity groups or demographics anyway at any university, and varsity athletics is one, for example. So we've got about 650 varsity athletes. Those athletes come in, they automatically have friends. Everything is set up for them. And our athletes graduate at a very high rate. Their GPAs are higher than the rest of the student body. But what other affinity groups might we have? Well, we created the Performing Arts Scholars Program, and that has been just spectacularly successful. So we have more than 2,000 students, as you know, Susan, in the Performing Arts Scholars Program. They come in with higher GPAs at RIT. They achieve higher GPAs. Their graduation rates are much higher. And those students, they pretty much don't leave because they have their affinity group. They've got their jazz combo, or they're performing in a musical theater performance, or whatever it is. And now we also have something called ArtX, where students can gain experiences in the studio arts, even if they're not majoring in the studio arts. And the newest of these type affinity groups is the Sustainability Scholars. Last year was the first pilot year, and this year we have many more applications. But I think as we offer these kinds of activities and chances for building friendships and networks, it makes it really hard for a student to leave. It creates a lot of stickiness here at RIT.
Which is such a win for us and for the students,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we don't do anybody any good if they come here and leave after a year or two.
Right.
Now, a lot of those students will get a degree from another university, but we want them here.
That's right. Right. Great. So another aspect of the strategic plan and its impact is facilities.
Yes.
And you have had such a tremendous impact on changing the face of the campus. Let's talk about a few of the big changes. The shed.
Yeah, so it's hard to ignore the shed, isn't it? So that came about for a couple of different reasons. When I first arrived on campus, and Susan, you may have had the same experience. I'll bet almost every alum that is tuned into this broadcast had this experience. For the first 2 or 3 months, it's really confusing because it's Brick City, and we love our bricks, and we have students that can tell you exactly how many bricks we have. But the problem with the brick walls is every time you turn a corner, there's another brick wall in front of you. And number one, it's confusing because brick walls pretty much all look alike, and so it's hard to orient yourself. And number two, there was so much exciting work at RIT that was hidden behind brick walls. And so if you wanted to go discover, for example, what all these different project teams were doing, you'd have to take the grand tour and peek around every wall and go in every building. There was nothing that was all that transparent. So anyway, because of those reasons, I had this idea that we could build something, which turns out to be the shed. And rule number one, no bricks, all glass and steel. rule number 2, when you walk into the building, there has to be a massive atrium with lots of different floors of activity, and you have to be able to see it all from a single vantage point. The next rule was I wanted this thing to be this gigantic maker space, but ringed with performing arts facilities, so that we kind of make a statement that making isn't always about physical objects. Very often it is, and in our IT especially it often is, but it could be about performances. It could be in a different field. Maybe you're making a new policy or a new law. It could be something else that's new. And so, and then, well, one other thing. We also badly were in need of large classrooms for active learning. In an active learning classroom, a student doesn't get to just sit back in their seat and listen to the sage on the stage and take notes. That's not what happens. The students are to have already looked at the notes for that quote lecture, and then they spend the lecture hour working together on exercises that are assigned by the faculty member. And so, as you know, we built 5 colossal active classrooms into the shed. And a byproduct of that is we end up with thousands of students going in there every day, witnessing all the making activity while they're going to class or perhaps departing from class and heading back to the dorm. And they see, oh, maybe I could join the rocket team. Maybe I could join the electric motorcycle team. Or there's a really cool piece of equipment. We've got a couple of 3D printers there. They're so large you could just walk inside of them almost. Right. Maybe I, as a freshman, could even learn how to use those pieces of equipment and operate them. And in fact, you can. Any student on our campus can be trained on any piece of equipment in the shed. And so that has turned out now to be sort of a new version of a student center. And when you're there during classes, you know, a Monday through Friday, it's like Grand Central Station. It's just awesome. And I think it has kind of turned out to be an emblem of our IT, and it is a huge magnet for student recruitment. So that has worked out really, really well.
Terrific. Are there other campuses around the country that you know of that have something that is similar, or are we the only ones?
So we're the only ones. There are plenty of campuses that have maker spaces and some very nice maker spaces. There are some campuses that even have a dorm sitting on top of the maker spaces. I think the drawback for that kind of arrangement is then the rest of the student body that doesn't live in that dorm, they're not so sure that maker space is for them. And I don't know of any other facility in the nation or the world that has the performing arts integrated with the maker spaces and then with active classrooms. I haven't seen it anywhere.
And it's so central on
It
campus.
is, right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
We were so lucky. We just had that little grassy hillside
That's right.
between the student center and the library. And there's sort of a continuum of learning, because in the student center, we've got space for a lot of our student clubs, the student government, and that sort of thing. And so I label that as kind of the least formal learning. And then we have Wallace Library. That's where students go to study, especially for exams. That's the most formal learning. And then we have this experiential facility, the shed, sitting right in between, tying it all together. And then, as you know, on the coattails of this project, we also totally gutted the library and started over inside. The library is gorgeous. There's only one floor that now has lots of shelves of books. The other floors, and you've seen it, Susan, are really intended for, well, part of it is we added a bunch of really nice classrooms right in Wallace. But then there are these large areas for students to work together, and a lot of side areas for students to study together, some side rooms that can be reserved for student project teams to work together and that sort of thing. And then we also get to exhibit a lot of things in the new library from our archives. And some of those exhibits rotate during the year. And then also, if for those who haven't seen the new Wallace Library, oh man, the artwork is amazing. It is
spectacular.
Like, am I in a library, or am I in an art museum,
right,
or am I in some big student activity space? What is it? And it's really our version of the modern day library.
Yeah. It's so impressive. So we have a new research facility. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. And so, you know, if a lot of this, it's about partly about serving our own research faculty in a better way, but also it's about recruiting faculty. So we did take an older building, Brown Hall, which is where marketing and communications had been located, and repurposed that building as a research lab building. That's been working out great. But now the building you're referring to is over in the Global Village area, and it's brand spanking new, opening right now as we speak. And we've assigned only about half of the labs there, and most of the labs are for heavy duty kind of lab work. They can be outfitted with fume hoods, or for chemistry or whatever, depending on the needs of the faculty member. So about half of these have been allocated to current faculty, but we're holding some of these in reserve to help recruit new faculty to the university, and maybe even do a little poaching, taking some faculty from other universities and moving them to Rochester.
So that said, then, how competitive is that building with research facilities at other leading research institutions?
Yeah, it's completely state of the art. And so, we have the capabilities for pretty much any kind of laboratory science that one would want to do. Now, we don't have a clean room in that building, but we've got that over into Kate Gleason, so we already have that. The one thing we're missing, and we might have to head in this direction at some point, is a vivarium. We've never done much work with live animals, and RIT really needs to get much more into the life sciences, and we're going to have to make a decision on whether we need a vivarium in order to make that happen.
So another new facility under construction is the athletic facility. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Another aspect of student life, right?
We'll see. I don't know. Maybe the alums would have had the same reaction I did when I first drove in from the north entrance to the campus, which is the main entrance. You hit the circle, and my golly, you see this high school stadium there, and you wonder, it's sort of out of character with the rest of the place. So I had been eager someday to see that replaced, and didn't actually know whether it would happen under my tenure as president or not. But Jim Waters, our CFO, who is a master at finances and making things happen, Jim agreed with me. And Jim really felt we probably need to upgrade all of our athletic facilities. And I had been receiving a lot of complaints in my early years about the fact that we didn't have nearly enough artificial turf fields. And in fact, when I came to RIT, we had 0 artificial turf fields, but we quickly put one in right next to the Policini Ice Arena. But at any rate, after that, the issue was that we had a lot of varsity teams that couldn't practice or play outdoors in their spring sports. It's pretty hard to play baseball and softball and do some other things outdoors in the Rochester spring unless you have artificial turf. And so Jim and I and others worked with an outside firm called Populous that works with many of the largest universities in the nation on their athletic facilities. And we knew we weren't shooting for the stars. After all, we have a primarily Division III operation that we run at RIT, where hockey, of course, is our only Division I sport. But still, we thought we could dress things up a lot and make it way more functional. And then it turns out, not just for the varsity athletes, but for our club teams, for intramurals, et cetera. And so all that's happened. And now we're waiting for the stadium to be completed. And that's going to be great. It's going to have all the amenities you would expect in a real stadium, locker rooms and restrooms and concessions, a really nice box for guests. And so if our guests here in the Sentinel Society want to come back to campus, there may be some events that are actually held in the stadium. And soccer has been doing well, and they will use the stadium, but especially the men's lacrosse team, of course, has just been incredible in recent years. And they just won the Liberty League again. I think it's the 12th time in the last 13 years. And they're going right back to the NCAA tournament. We'll see how far they get. I think we're ranked number 3 in the nation right now.
Really terrific.
And they have never had a real stadium to play in. And so this is going to be fantastic.
And an iconic building along the lines of the Shed is the Performing Arts Facility. Talk about that.
Yes. So we have these 2,000 plus performing arts scholars, and I think ultimately we're going to have a lot more of those students than we have now. We've been kind of
And why?
well, and the reason is in a lot of human brains, and this isn't true, I don't want to overgeneralize, but in a lot of human brains, music and math, they just go together like this. It was that way for me and not just my brothers and sister, my whole extended family, all the aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody that had some of the same genetics. They basically did two things, music and math. And some family members went in the musical direction or theater direction. Others became engineers or computer scientists and then did the music on the side. And I had noticed that actually earlier in my career when I was the engineering dean at Michigan. I was kind of scratching my head. Why was 35% of the marching band engineering students? Because we were only maybe 19% of the student body. And same deal with the men's glee club. And then I said, well, they're kind of like my family, I guess. And so I hypothesized that there is a pretty large set of high school students out there that are trying to decide what kind of college they want to go to. They might be the best student in their high school in the performing arts, and they also might be really good at math. And then they're trying to decide, what do I do? If I study a STEM discipline, I'm pretty much guaranteed of a high-paying job. If I follow my passions in music or theater, I'll enjoy that, but then where might that lead me? And most of those students actually do decide to major in a STEM discipline. But there's no university out there that is specifically serving that type of student. And if I refer once again to my predecessor institution, they have the maybe number one, number two musical theater department in the nation. But you will never see an engineering student in one of those musical theater performances. You will never see a physics student or a chemistry student in any of those performances because those performances are restricted for the majors. Well, here at RIT, we have a different idea. We want our very best students, no matter what you're studying, on stage. And so this has been just a huge magnet for attracting students. But the reason it's going to grow further is we have not been advertising this very heavily yet. And the reason is we had not hired more faculty until just last fall. And so now we've got more faculty, we can handle more students, and we didn't have the modern day facilities. So the shed has helped a lot, but now the theater that you're talking about, that's going to be not just the cherry on top of the cake, it's going to be the cake. It's the cake. Yeah, so this is a very unusual theater. In my opinion, it's likely to become the best venue for musical theater performances, certainly in all of upstate New York, and maybe in pretty much the whole Northeast outside of New York City. It's going to be that good. So this theater is designed specifically for musical theater productions. It'll be useful for a lot of other things as well. And it's also being built around a massive, massive historic theater organ. And I'll admit it, I happen to like organs and I have a lot of organists in my family, but I wanted this theater to, again, have some unique kind of characteristic, just like we want RIT to be unique. I want multiple reasons for people to come to this theater. And so I have a friend named Stephen Ball, and I knew that he had a phenomenal organ in storage, but he's also very knowledgeable about organs all across the nation. And I called him and asked him, what would be the finest organ you think we could get our hands on? And Stephen said, well, that would be mine, referring to his organ. And so this organ is not a Wurlitzer, it's a Barton organ. It was taken out of the Hollywood Theater in Detroit in the early to mid 1960s and has been in storage ever since. That Hollywood Theater in Detroit was incredible, one of the finest theaters in the entire nation, but it suffered the same fate as most of those vaudeville theaters. At some point, the wrecking ball came, but the organ was taken out just right before the wrecking ball showed up. And it had been in storage. And so we've now been in the process of having that thing refurbished. We have every single piece. We have the big diagrams that show the layouts of the pipe chambers, et cetera. And we expect that we'll be able to partner with a lot of organizations that will want to use this theater specifically because we have that organ. One of those organizations will be the Eastman Museum downtown because they have this marvelous collection of silent films. And they don't have a venue that'll be nearly as large as this theater in order to, and they certainly don't have access to this kind of organ either.
No.
And so this will be, a really impressive place to show silent films. And I think knowing our students, they're going to find all kinds of innovative ways to integrate the organ into other kinds of performances in imaginative ways. But the last thing I'll say, because this is turning into a monologue, is I'd always wanted to work with the architect Michael Munson, and I had known him for a number of years. He's one of the leading architects of his generation. He resides in Los Angeles. He was very involved in the design of the Disney Theater in Los Angeles, which was designed by the Frank Gehry firm, and Michael played a leading role when he worked for Frank Gehry in those early years of Michael's career. But I won't describe all the masterpieces he's designed because I'll go off and talk too much about Michael. But at any rate, we got him to design this theater. And there will be a lot of people that will come to our campus just to see this Michael Munson creation. It's going to be amazing.
So we will have a spectacular facility.
We will.
A first-in-class organ.
Right.
What do you hope that the physical structure will do for RIT?
There are a couple of things. Number one, I want for it to build community. And this theater is not going to be like most other theaters from the following standpoint. The theater is a big box that sits on a plateau. The plateau is ringed with windows where you can look in and you can watch the costumes being made, the sets being constructed. You can see the rehearsals. We want this to be seen as a making facility because RIT is all about making. And the fact that we're going to be doing a lot more in musical theater means that almost every student on campus will have a chance to be involved if they wish. You don't have to be a singer or a dancer or an actor. You can work on costumes, on sets, on lights, on sound. And nowadays, the sets include huge, gigantic animated panels or LED panels showing animation so that the set actually is alive, it moves. And that's the way, of course, it's done on Broadway now. And we have one of the finest animation programs in the nation, a degree program. And so I see this as a community building activity and pretty much guarantee that's what's going to happen. So that's one thing. The second thing is it's going to be a magnet for attracting students. And it's one of the reasons I think the Performing Arts Scholars Program is going to get a lot larger. And I don't want to push this too far because you don't have to be in the performing arts in order to be at RIT. That would be a huge stretch. But this is going to give us just a wider and wider access to those kind of students.
Terrific. So we've talked about so many different aspects of your strategic plan over the last 8 years. You have created this incredible foundation on which we can build going forward. Where do you see us in 25 years?
In 25 years, that's a good question. We'll get to talk a little bit about my my successor, Bill Sanders, I think.
Yes.
Honestly, I think RIT is going to become even much better known, building on the distinctiveness it already has. I think it's going to be a higher ranked place. I think it's going to be built in a way, continue to be built in a way that honors its past, where we started out as pretty much a blue-collar kind of school and serving a lot of very poor families, especially from the southern tier and northern Pennsylvania and that sort of thing. I think that's always going to be a part of us, but I think we're going to be increasingly attracting students from a much broader socioeconomic swath. In fact, that's already happening now. And we'll be climbing in the rankings, almost whether we want to or not. If we just keep working in the direction we're working, we're going to become much more prominent and we'll be climbing in the rankings.
And you mentioned NTID early on. How important is that to the Institute as a whole?
Well, that's a great question, Susan, because that's a place where we can still get a lot more mileage in that I'll be honest, I think that when NTID was first constructed, I think it was put in the wrong place on our campus.
Mhm.
It's over on the residential side. It maybe kind of made sense because they were going to have a dormitory and maybe they wanted their academic programs to be close to that dormitory. But I think NTID uh, is much more central to the university than that geography would ever indicate. And I think that we have a lot of opportunities for mounting research programs that are joint between NTID and other colleges within the university. We're doing some of that, but I think we barely scratched the surface of what's possible there. I think NTID can have much larger research programs, and I think NTID itself can probably have some new degree programs in areas like audiology that will couple with the research. So I see a lot more happening there. Socially, NTID is just totally integrated. You know, they're just part of the essential fabric of RIT. But I think programmatically, there's a lot more that can be done.
Well, that's so exciting.
It's very promising for the future.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Dr. Bill Sanders,
Yes.
who will succeed you on the 1st
Yeah.
of July. So what does his appointment mean for the future of our community from your perspective?
I think it's I'm excited. And I have to be careful when I talk about Bill because he and I have been friends for a long time. And as you know, we were the very same department back in the 1990s and early 2000s at the University of Illinois. And I will say, but Bill is going to be the third electrical and computer engineer in a row that is president of RIT. I hope that's okay with people. But I want to be careful because just, you know, the fact that Bill and I are friends, the fact that actually we do think a fair amount alike, doesn't mean he will do things in exactly the same way I have. I would never expect that. Bill's going to have his own ideas. He's his own person, and he's been incredibly successful. He tackles big things. He mostly only works on things that turn into huge opportunities. And
talk briefly about a couple of those things.
So
this isn't about Dr. Sanders, but it will be interesting bridging to.
I'm happy to. Back before cybersecurity became as prominent as it is now, Bill worked on something called trustworthy computing, that you wanted to trust that the computer was essentially giving you the right information, giving you the right answers. You wanted the computing that might help operate a power plant to be trustworthy. You don't want that power plant failing. And he built an institute for essentially trustworthy computing at the University of Illinois, and it was an incredibly interdisciplinary thing. And he was absolutely the person that did that. At some point, he got noticed by the governor of the state of Illinois, and the governor sent him on some big mission to build another kind of institute in Chicago, even though he was down in Champaign-Urbana, which is 2.5 hours away. And Bill would have to tell you the details about that. But he always, he thinks big. And he comes from Carnegie Mellon, which I think is helpful to us. Carnegie Mellon actually has almost the same history as RIT. You know, Carnegie Mellon University, which is so highly regarded now, it started out as Carnegie Institute, or as the Carnegie Institute, which was just pretty much like the Mechanics Institute. And Bill feels that RIT is actually on the same path as Carnegie Mellon, and that we can rise to similar levels of prominence over time. Carnegie Mellon now, they're a massive research university, and you know, we're heading in that direction very rapidly. Although we're always careful to point out we don't want to give an inch in terms of the quality education we deliver. But it's possible to both educate and to create new knowledge, and we intend to do both. Anyway, and Bill's a wonderful personality. People are going to like him a lot. He's easy to work with. He works incredibly hard. So you might get calls from him really early in the morning.
So given that, what words of advice do you have for him?
Gee, and honestly, I don't think he needs any advice. But I'll tell you the advice I received from my predecessor, Bill Dessler. And Bill was totally hands-off, but and so he only gave me one piece of advice. He probably wasn't going to give me two pieces. He just said, Dave, don't make any changes at RIT until you understand the place. That's pretty much a verbatim quote. And Bill knew I was coming from these massive Big Ten universities with these gigantic research programs. And I think he was sort of giving me a subtle warning to not make RIT one of those. And he didn't have anything to worry about because RIT is special the way it is. And for those that might just look at the name, they might think that, oh, we ought to become as much as we can like MIT. And I'd say, no, we don't. That's the wrong thing to do. We need to be ourselves. And in my opinion is we need to leverage the arts in what we do, because that's the thing that all these other technical schools don't have very much, with one little exception, Carnegie Mellon, where Bill Sanders is coming from. Their programs in the arts are not nearly as broad as ours, but they have a phenomenal drama school there. And I don't know the history of the place on that side of the fence, but they have that sitting next to one of the world's very finest computer science departments.
Mhm.
And they developed independently, but they're at the same place. And we have some of that same kind of thing going on here.
Well, terrific. It certainly is an exciting time for RIT.
Yeah. So I never did get around to my advice for Bill. I'm not going to
No.
give him any advice.
Other than what Bill Dessler gave you.
I don't think Bill needs any advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, what is the legacy, the lasting impression that you would like to be known for?
Gosh.
You have had such an impact in so many ways on so many things. We've touched on a number of them today, but if we look back in 10 years, what do you hope we will remember you for?
This is a hard question to answer because I'm not big on legacy.
We know that, but you will have spent 8 years here.
Try to respond to this. A lot of the things that I've actually worked on, I hope are foundational, and they sort of set the stage for the next great thing, whatever that turns out to be. And I guess I hope I'm remembered as student-centered, because the students are really just incredibly important to Nancy and me. But other than that, I think setting the foundation for greatness, and the shed is part of that. The Performing Arts Scholars is part of that. Hiring better faculty is part of that. Bringing in better students is part of that. But, when I came in, the university had already been elevating rapidly under the two previous presidents, Al Simone and Bill Dessler. And I think the job of the trustees is to try to hire the right person at the right time to lead the institution. And history will tell whether you did that with me or not. I'm not going to make any proclamation, but there's enough hindsight now. We can see what happened after Al. We can see what happened after Bill, and then let's wait a few years and see what happens after Dave. And if those things are great, then maybe I help set that foundation.
So you mentioned greatness.
Yeah.
How should we define that?
Well, there are a lot of ways to think about it. I measure greatness partly through the accomplishments of our alumni, and that obviously follows on to the strength of our student body. And so increasingly, I think we're going to see our alums just having the very highest level type positions, the most influential positions in society. And not that everybody needs to lead something or be in charge of something, but I think we're going to see our alums having really positive impacts, doing a lot of tremendous good in the world, and be in positions where they're able to kind of scale up what they're individually capable of because they're leading large organizations. So I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see our faculty much more highly recognized by their peers at other universities. And as we continue to build our PhD programs, we're going to have many more than we've ever had in the past of these PhD graduates go on and become faculty members at leading institutions. I would say if you reset the clock 10 or 20 years in the past, the number of faculty out there that had their PhD from RIT was pretty close to zero.
Mhm.
Those days are gone. We're going to have our PhD students, they're going to be out there, they're going to be faculty. And then those institutions are going to know us through their faculty. So those are a couple of things. But overall, I hope that we would look at the greatness of the university in terms of the impact that we have on society, the goodness we do for the world, and not just for ourselves individually. As you know, it's not a matter of every student having a job, having a career. That should be table stakes, that if you come to RIT, that's going to happen. But collectively, I think we want to have a very positive impact on the world.
Well, what a terrific close. Dave, this has been such an enjoyable hour, spending time reminiscing
Well,
with you.
I can't believe it's been an hour.
I certainly have enjoyed it. I hope everyone who's joined us this afternoon has enjoyed it. Our RIT community is so indebted to you for the investment that you have made over the last 8 years in growing this institution. You and your lovely wife, Nancy, as well, have been such important members of the Rochester community, but such great leaders for this institution. We are so indebted to the two of you. Thank you so very much from all of us for all you have done for this institution. We are so grateful.
Thank you, Susan. For Nancy and me, it's been an honor. It's been a privilege. And people know we'll be moving back to Michigan because we have family there. But our number one hobby will be visiting RIT and visiting Rochester and keeping tabs on what's going. We're not going to interfere, but we're in love with this place.
Well, we certainly hope to see you frequently. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Have a great evening. Go Tigers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.